The morning after my daughter's wedding, I called my estate attorney. Not to congratulate myself, not to celebrate. I called because the night before my son-in-law had looked at me across the head table, in front of 200 guests, in front of the priest who had baptized my daughter, in front of my own reflection in the mirrored wall behind him, and said loud enough for the entire table to hear, "Well, at least the cleaning lady showed up on time," and my daughter had laughed. I want you to understand something before I tell you the rest of this. I am 67 years old. I have worked since I was 14. I raised my daughter alone after her father left when she was 3, and I never once, not once, let her go without. She had dance lessons. She had orthodontia. She had a college education that I paid for in full because I believed in her that completely. She knew what I was worth. She chose to laugh anyway. So the next morning, while she and her new husband were on a plane to Tuscany, I sat in my kitchen in the house they thought I rented, poured myself a cup of coffee, and dialed the number I had memorized 15 years ago. "Hargrove and Associates," the receptionist said. "How can I direct your call?" "This is Sylvia Marsh," I said. "I need to speak with Mr. Hargrove. Tell him it's about the trust." Let me back up. I spent 31 years working as a hospital housekeeper. That is not a euphemism. I pushed a cart. I changed linens. I scrubbed floors in the oncology ward at St. Catherine's Medical Center in Columbus, Ohio, and I did it with pride because that floor needed to be clean, and someone had to do it, and I was good at it. What people don't know, what I never told anyone, not even my daughter, is that I started buying property when she was in middle school. The first one was a duplex, 3 blocks from the hospital. A colleague of mine, a woman named Petra, who'd worked maintenance for 20 years, told me her cousin was selling it fast because of a divorce. The price was low. I had been saving quietly for years, living on less than I made, driving the same car, eating lunch I packed from home, and I had enough for the down payment. I was terrified. I didn't know anything about real estate. But I knew about maintenance. I knew what things cost to fix, and I knew which ones people let go too long. So I bought the duplex. I painted it myself over a long weekend. I found 2 tenants within 3 weeks. That was the beginning. By the time my daughter started college, I had 4 properties. By the time she graduated, 8. I never advertised it. I kept my housekeeper job because I genuinely didn't mind the work. And because I had learned something important in those oncology hallways, the moment you start believing you're above something is the moment you start making stupid decisions. I lived in a modest house on Clover Street, nothing fancy. A good neighborhood, a manageable yard, a kitchen I'd updated myself with tile I found on clearance. My neighbors thought I was a retiree on a pension. My daughter thought I scraped by on Social Security and a small savings account. I never corrected her, not because I was ashamed of the money, because I wanted to see who she was becoming without it. And for a long time, she was becoming someone good. She was funny and sharp, and she called me every Sunday. She volunteered at a literacy program. She cried at the right parts of movies. I used to watch her across the dinner table and feel this quiet, complete pride, the kind that doesn't need to announce itself. Then she met him. His name was Theron. He came from what his mother called an established family, which, as far as I could tell, meant they owned a boat they couldn't afford and went to a church where everyone wore the same shade of khaki. He was handsome in a way that knew it. He shook my hand the first time we met and called me sweetie before he knew my name. I said nothing. I watched. Over the next 2 years, I watched my daughter slowly stop calling on Sundays. I watched her start talking about our social circle, as though that were a thing a person needed. I watched her apologize for me, once, at a dinner party when she thought I was out of earshot. "She's just not really. She's from a different world, you know." I stood in the hallway of their apartment and held that sentence in my chest like a stone. I still said nothing, because she was my daughter. Because I had spent her whole life believing that people could be better than their worst moments. Because I genuinely thought, that she would find her way back. The wedding was at a vineyard outside Columbus, It was beautiful. Whoever planned it had excellent taste, and I later learned that whoever was me, in the sense that my daughter had quietly asked me to contribute $40,000 toward the venue, which I had done without comment, because she was my child and I wanted her to have the day she dreamed of. I wore a blue dress I'd bought at a department store. It was a good dress. I wasn't trying to make a statement. I don't perform wealth. I never have. The dress fit well and the color suited me, and I sat at the head table because I was the mother of the bride, and that is where the mother of the bride sits. Theron's mother sat across from me. She was the kind of woman who treats waitstaff like furniture, and she spent the first hour of the reception asking me questions that weren't really questions. What neighborhood did I live in? What I did for work? And when I said I was retired, the pause she left before moving on said everything. I was used to it. I'd been used to it for 40 years. People see what they expect to see. What I wasn't prepared for was my daughter sitting right there and not saying a word. And then came the toast. Theron stood up with his champagne glass and said some charming things about love, and then he looked down the table at me and said, with that smile that worked on everyone, "We're so glad the cleaning lady could make it. She even dressed up." There was a ripple of uncomfortable laughter. A few people didn't laugh at all. The priest looked at his hands. My daughter, my child, for whom I had worked every day of my adult life, covered her mouth and laughed. I set down my champagne glass. I picked up my clutch. I said quietly to no one in particular, the food was lovely, and I walked out. I drove home on the highway with the windows down because I needed air. I wasn't crying. I want to be clear about that. I was something past crying. I was somewhere very cold and very quiet, the way a room gets after something irreversible has happened. By the time I got home, I had made a decision. Not out of anger. Fades. Not out of hurt. Hurt can be apologized away with enough effort. What I felt was something more like clarity, the kind you only get when you finally stop waiting for a person to be who you hoped they were. I sat at my kitchen table. I looked at the folder on the shelf, the one that held the trust documents, the property portfolios, the accounts, a life's work, 31 years of packed lunches and clearance tile and choosing the long way because it was quieter. I thought about my daughter. I thought about the $40,000. And then I went to bed because there was nothing more to do that night, and I have always believed in sleeping before decisions. The next morning, I called Mr. Hargrove. He had been my estate attorney for 15 years. He knew the full picture, all 11 properties, the investment accounts, the trust I had structured carefully so that my daughter would be provided for in ways that couldn't be touched by a divorce, or a lawsuit, or a charming man who called people sweetie before he knew their names. "Sylvia," he said when he came on the line. He had a careful voice. "What can I do for you?" "I want to restructure the trust," I said. "All of it. I need to know what's possible." There was a brief pause. "Can I ask what's prompting this?" I told him. "Not everything, just enough." He listened without interrupting, which is one of the things I've always appreciated about him. "All right," he said when I finished. "Come in Thursday. We'll go through the options." I went in Thursday. What I learned was this: because the trust was structured the way it was, with me as the primary trustee, I had significant latitude in how and when my daughter would receive anything. She was named as a beneficiary, but the disbursement schedule, the conditions, all of it, that was mine to determine while I was alive and competent. I could not cut her out entirely, nor did I want to. She was still my daughter. Whatever she had become in the last 2 years, she was still the little girl who used to fall asleep in the car on the way home from the library. And I wasn't cruel, but I could restructure things. I could ensure that nothing, not $1, not one property, transferred to her in a way that Theron could access. I could add conditions. I could, if I chose, redirect a portion of the estate to the literacy program she used to volunteer for before she decided volunteering wasn't sophisticated enough. I did all of those things. I also, quietly, updated the letter I had written years ago to sit with the trust documents. The letter I had always planned to give her eventually. The one that explained everything. The whole picture. Why I had lived the way I lived, and what I had built, and what I had hoped for her. I had written it originally as a gift. Now I rewrote it as something else. Not a punishment. An explanation. You knew who I was, I wrote. You chose what was easier. I sealed the letter and put it back in the folder, and I went home and made dinner. My daughter called 3 weeks after the wedding. She'd been back from Tuscany for 10 days, and this was the first call. Mom, she said. Her voice was careful in the way voices get when people are preparing an approach. I think we need to talk about the wedding. All right, I said. I know Theron's toast was. I mean, his humor can be a little much. You know how he is. I don't, actually, I said. I've met him 7 times. Silence. He didn't mean anything by it. He called me the cleaning lady in front of 200 people and your priest, I said. What did he mean by it? Mom? And you laughed. The silence that followed was a different kind. The kind where a person is trying to find a version of the truth they can live with. I was nervous, she finally said. It was my wedding day. I didn't want a scene. I didn't make a scene, I said. I left. That was the scene? I thought about that. Maybe she was right. Maybe leaving quietly is its own kind of statement. I didn't apologize for it. I love you, I told her. That has not changed, and it will not change. But I need you to understand that what happened at that wedding showed me something I can't unsee. And I need some time. She cried. I stayed on the phone. I didn't tell her it was fine because it wasn't. And I have never believed in telling people things are fine when they aren't. We hung up without resolution. That was all right. Some things don't resolve in a single phone call. What happened next came from a direction I didn't expect. About 4 months after the wedding, I got a call from a woman. I'll call a friend of a friend. Someone connected to a real estate circle I'd been part of quietly for years. She'd heard something. Not gossip. A fact passed carefully, the way facts pass in small professional communities. Theron's family business, a property management company his father had started, was under investigation. Tax irregularities, the kind that accumulate over years when someone is careless and confident in equal measure. The kind that unravels slowly and then all at once. I want to be careful here. I didn't know the details. I don't know them fully even now. What I know is that within 6 months of that call, Theron's father had retained a criminal attorney, and Theron himself was named in a civil suit related to the company's finances. My daughter called me in a panic. Mom, I need to ask you something. Ask, do you have any? She stopped, started again. Theron needs a good attorney. We don't have the liquid. Stop, I said gently. Before you finish that sentence, I want to ask you something first. She waited. When Theron said what he said at the wedding, when he called me the cleaning lady, did you think he was wrong? About what I was? About what I'm worth? A long pause. Mom, that's not fair right now. I know it's not, I said, but I need to know. She didn't answer. And there, in that silence, was the real answer. I'm not going to help pay for Theron's attorney, I said. Not because I want him to suffer, because it's not my responsibility, and because I've learned in the last several months that you and I have some things to figure out before I start making financial decisions based on your emergencies. She was crying again. I let her cry. But I will help you, I said, with one condition. What condition? Come see me, I said. Not to talk about Theron, not to talk about money. Just come see me. Have dinner at the house. Let me show you something. She came on a Tuesday. I cooked her favorite meal, the one she used to ask for on her birthday every year, the one she'd told Theron's mother was her childhood comfort food, as though that were something to be embarrassed about. She ate 2 full plates and didn't say anything sophisticated at all, and for the first time in 2 years she felt like my daughter again. After dinner, I brought out the folder. I didn't make a speech about it. I just set it on the table between us and let her open it. She was quiet for a very long time. "Mom," she finally said. Her voice was different, smaller. "How long?" 30 years, I said. She turned pages slowly. Property assessments, account statements, the trust structure, the letter I'd written. When she got to the letter, she stopped. She read it slowly, and I watched her face change. Not dramatically, not like in movies, just a quiet, incremental shift. The way ice looks just before it starts to change. She put the letter down. "I knew," she said quietly. "I knew you weren't. I knew you had more than you let on. I didn't know how much, but I knew." "I know," I said. "That's what's in the letter." She looked at me. "And you let Theron say that." "I wanted to see what you would do," I said. "I've been watching for 2 years, hoping I was wrong about what I was seeing." I wasn't wrong. She didn't argue with that. I gave her credit for that. "What happens now?" she asked. "That depends on you," I said. "Not on the money. On who you decide to be going forward. I've already restructured the trust. You should know that. Nothing has been removed that was yours. But there are conditions now, and nothing goes to Theron in any scenario." She absorbed that. "I'm not asking you to leave him," I said. "That's your life. But I am asking you to remember who you were before you started apologizing for me. Because that person I would do anything for." She cried. I let her. I didn't comfort her too quickly, because some tears need to run their course before anything useful can happen. When she finally looked up, she said, "I'm sorry, Mom, for the wedding, for not saying anything." "I know," I said. "That's not enough, is it?" "It's a start," I said. "It's a real start. I am still the same person I was before all of this. I still drive a sensible car. I still shop clearance when clearance makes sense. I still have lunch with Petra on the first Tuesday of every month. And we still talk about properties and maintenance schedules and whether the market makes sense in the East Side neighborhoods. And it is the best conversation I have all month. My daughter and I are finding our way back to each other. It is slow. It is not a straight line. Theron is still in the picture, and I suspect he always will be. And I have made my peace with that, not because I think he is a good man, but because she is an adult, and I cannot choose her life for her. What I can do is be steady, be honest, be here without apology, exactly as I am. The trust is restructured. The letter is in the folder. Mr. Hargrove has a copy of everything with instructions. A few months ago, my daughter asked me why I never told her. Why I'd let her grow up thinking I was just the housekeeper, just the woman who scraped by. I thought about it for a while before I answered. "Because I wanted you to love me before you knew what I had," I said. "I wanted to know that the love was real, and for a long time it was." She was quiet. "Is it still?" I asked. She reached across the table and took my hand. "Yes," she said. "I'm trying to make sure it shows." That was enough for me. Not everything, not all the way healed, but enough. I have spent 67 years building things quietly and watching carefully and waiting for people to show me who they were. I have rarely been wrong. I have sometimes been slow to accept what I saw. I am not slow anymore. I know what I'm worth. I've always known. The difference now is that the people around me are finally learning it too. And they're learning it not because I told them, but because I was patient enough to let the truth do its own work. That is the only revenge I have ever needed.